3 months ago, me and my little sister Gianna moved to our current hometown from literally the other side of the country. We had been living with our parents for our entire lives, and to put it simply, they are extremely shitty people. They are hyper narcissist, physically abusive, emotionally abusive, etc. After years and years of dealing with all their shit, I had decided that enough was enough. I went through a very long, intensely painful legal battle to obtain custody of Gianna and become her legal guardian. I finally succeeded. I decided that we needed to get away from where we grew up. One of my friends, Matt, 21 male from high school, goes to a college in a relatively well-off small town, in one of those wealthy college town places. He lives off campus in his own house, and he made an offer for me and Gianna to live with him for a while. I thanked him endlessly, took him up on his offer, and we've been living with him since then. I got a job and I pay rent to him, and Gianna goes to school around here. Ever since I got a job, I've been trying to save up money to move out of my friend's house and get me and Gianna our own place. I want to go to community college in the future and build a stable life for me and Gianna. The day me and Gianna moved in with Matt, his next-door neighbor, Linda, came over to talk to us. She brought us cookies and welcomed us to the neighborhood. She also brought along her son Sam to meet Gianna. She was extremely nosy about why we moved in with Matt. We told her where we were from, but that was about it. We didn't want to talk about our past with such a nosy lady. She kept pestering us with questions until Gianna finally said it's none of your business. Linda looked very offended when she said that. She left us with the cookies, but she stormed back into her house, dragging her son with her. When Matt came back from class, we told him about our encounter with Linda, but he just laughed and told us she was nothing to worry about. According to him, she was extremely passive-aggressive, and that was all there was to it. The rest of the neighbors hate her guts. We didn't know what else to think, so we took his word for it. For roughly a week, Linda didn't talk to us, but eventually she came around and apologized. She said that she didn't want to get off on the wrong foot with us. She brought Sam with her again and wanted him to get to know Gianna. The only interaction that they shared at that point was waiting at the bus stop together, and Linda wanted them to spend some time together today. I always ask Gianna if she's okay with these kinds of things before they happen, and she gave me a look that basically she doesn't give a shit about it spending an hour with Sam. They went outside to play, and Linda invited me over to her house for coffee. As soon as we sat down, Linda made a comment to me about what Gianna said to her last week, telling her that our past was none of her business. She thought Gianna had been rude and disrespectful. I don't know if all kids are like this, but Gianna often tells it like it is. She doesn't behave that way to purposely antagonize anyone, however. I explained to Linda that Gianna is pretty straight up with what she thinks and that she didn't mean to provoke her on purpose. I didn't apologize for what Gianna said, though, because I agree with Gianna that our past is none of Linda's business. It seemed like Linda was expecting me to apologize, and when I didn't, she looked intensely bothered. She quickly changed the subject, however, and she started to blab about funny things that Sam says. I won't go into detail on that because it'll bore everyone to death, but I'll just say that from her stories that Sam seems like a problematic kid. Spoiled, mouthy, badly behaved, etc. I also learned that Linda seems hell-bent on presenting her family as picture-perfect as she possibly can. She has an older son and an older daughter, who I've never seen, but from her account are the best kids to ever walk this earth. She seems like a major perfectionist to me. After the hour at Linda's, I went back home and found Gianna in the kitchen. I asked her how Sam was, and she said he was fine. She added, he's a total brat, but I can deal with him. When she saw the surprised look in my face, I hadn't expected him to be just fine. Gianna is a pretty resilient little kid, though, so I trust her to take care of herself when Sam is around. A few days later, Linda brought over her husband and Sam's father, Jim, for us to meet. He had just returned from a business trip and was heading off on another one in a few days, so Linda didn't want to miss this opportunity for him to meet us to slip away. He seemed 100% disengaged throughout my entire conversation with him. He kept checking his phone, and at one point he stepped out of the room to take a call. I inferred from his behavior that he's probably a very busy man. I don't really want to get to know him, though, because at one point he remarked that he was extremely relieved that Matt and I weren't partners. Yikes. After living next door to Linda and her family for about 3 months, it's become clear that Sam truly is a miniature piece of shit. At the bus stop, he pokes and flicks Gianna, and doesn't relent until she yells at him to stop. On the bus, he sat behind her and kicked the seat constantly until the bus driver forced him to sit in the back of the bus. At school, they're in the same class, and on the first day that she arrived, he told the entire class that he saw her looking through his bedroom window the very first night we moved in. Obviously, this is 100% bullshit, alienating her from the very start. During class, he steals her supplies, calls her names, etc. When they're at home and the neighborhood kids are around, he constantly makes fun of her and makes rude comments about her to the other kids. Gianna always tells me about these incidents before anyone else does, which I think is pretty irresponsible on the school's part and on our neighbor's part. I talked to both the bus driver and their teacher, and they said that they would keep an eye on Sam, but I'm pretty sure nothing will come of that. I tried talking to Linda a few times, but she just kept brushing me off, saying that it's just what boys do, and even suggesting that Sam may have a crush on Gianna. The neighbors said the same kind of stuff. I told Gianna this, and she thought it was disgusting. Her response was only stupid people would believe that. Boys who tease girls to show them that they like them need to find a different way. However, when Sam and Gianna aren't in school, or when they aren't around other kids, Sam behaves completely differently. He comes over almost every single day asking Gianna if she wants to play. Strangely, Gianna usually says yes. I keep telling her that she doesn't have to play with him if she doesn't want to. He's a little asshole and doesn't even deserve to play with her. Honestly, I have no idea how this kid has friends, but she always insists that she's okay when she plays with him. She never comes home crying or upset after she spends time with him. Every time I ask her how their playing was, she says it was fine. If I press further, she tells me to stop worrying, so I take that as a sign that she's okay. I've recently started keeping an eye on Gianna and Sam if I'm around, and Sam behaves very oddly. He still teases her, but she teases him back, which seems to surprise him. On some days, he's in a bad mood, and it shows in his conversations with Gianna. He complains endlessly, but Gianna is pretty patient with him, way more than I would be if I was a 10-year-old kid. But on other days, he's cheery and friendly towards her, and they have a good time. Honestly, their relationship is a mystery to me. However, yesterday I was in the kitchen cooking, and I overheard them yelling extremely loud. I ran outside and found Gianna crying. Still sobbing, she told me that she had been playing her Nintendo DS and Sam had lost their game to her for the third time in a row. He had grabbed her DS out of her hands and snapped it in two, breaking it. Her DS was the only valuable thing that she owned. She yelled at him and he actually swung a fist at her. The punch didn't land because she grabbed his arm in time, but since she's been physically abused in the past, she was basically having an emotional breakdown. This was the last straw for me. I angrily told Sam he was no longer allowed to play with Gianna anymore. I didn't call him a fuckhole to his face, but I sure wanted to. Sam ran inside crying. I took Gianna inside, and a few minutes later, Linda stormed into the house, screaming like a banshee. She told me that Gianna was a horrible little girl and that she was not raised well in the slightest. She said that she needed manners and that if she was her kid, she would be disciplined in the proper way. I didn't even get a chance to explain to her that her son was the piece of shit, not Gianna, because she left before I could say a word. I have no idea what Sam said to his mom to provoke her response, but it was probably a huge lie. I spent the rest of the night taking care of Gianna. I cooked her favorite meal for dinner, and we watched a movie together. I even laid down with her in her bed when she went to sleep. This morning, I told her she didn't have to go to school if she didn't want to, but she said she was okay. This afternoon, Gianna came running into the house after school. She told me that Sam came to school late today and that he had a broken arm and a gigantic black eye. Even the teacher was shocked. The entire class kept asking him what had happened, but all he said was that he had fallen down the stairs at home. When Gianna approached him at recess asking him if he was okay, he didn't respond and he walked away as quickly as he could. When I heard this, I instantly saw major red flags, and Gianna did too. But my question for you guys is, where should I go from here? My initial instinct was to call the police. The reason why I'm hesitating is because the only evidence I have is Sam's appearance. Linda has never, and I mean never, shown any signs of physical or emotional abuse. And believe me, I know the signs. Perfectionism sometimes exists along with emotional abuse, but I have never been around Linda when she hasn't showered her son with praise and affection. She constantly talks about how much she loves him, and she's involved as a parent leader in every single one of his activities. She will go to infinite lengths to defend him, even when he screws up, as I saw yesterday, and she seems to think that he can do no wrong. If the authorities show up at her doorstep, and I have no reason to believe that she would act perfectly sane about the entire situation, because appearance is everything to her, and I'm guessing that she'll act like everything is 100% A-OK. And once the authorities leave, she'll turn on me, or even worse, on my sister, for telling me about Sam's condition. When she ran into the house yesterday to scream at me, I just thought she was a screaming crazy parent. After today, I have no clue what to think about her. I asked Gianna if Sam has ever shown any signs of going through abuse of any kind, and she said no. Whenever he complains, which is practically 24/7, it's never about his family. In fact, she said he never talks about his family. This only added to my confusion. So Reddit, what should I do? I am completely lost as to where to go from here. Matt hasn't returned from class yet, so I'll fill him in when he gets back, and hopefully I'll have some more background on Linda soon. Sam is a little shit, but that certainly doesn't mean he deserves a broken arm and a black eye. Now for the top of advices before reading the update. I once had a student that reminds me of Sam. Gets angry easily, is a brat for attention, and resorts to violence. Then one day he came in with bruises on his arms and back. Turns out his father was beating him regularly. You might want to give a call to social services. There's a good chance he's getting hit at home. Report it. Tell the school and your state's Child Protective Service. He's 10 and his mother or father may have broken his arm. He can't protect himself. I hope the nurse or doctor who saw Sam reported it to CPS. As a nurse practitioner, I definitely would have. A black eye plus a broken arm is a pretty sure sign, and I haven't even had to report more than one person before. Sometimes we can tell by the type of fracture it is. If it were a potential abuse situation, twisting fracture of the arm, for example, regardless, I think you should report it. It may completely sever any relationship you have with a crazy neighbor, but it could improve this boy's life. I'd only add one other thing. You mentioned that he comes around after school and it surprised you because they don't seem too friendly at school. I think that's a sign that he doesn't want to be home alone with his parents. It explains why he'd try most days to spend time with another person, even if he wasn't a big fan of your sister, because it's a lesser evil to him. She would be disciplined the proper way. This to me is a sign of abuse, or at least accepting abuse from Linda. Sam acted out in that way because he picks it up from home. He's 10. Was Jim home at the time? If I had to take a guess at what happened, Sam went home agitated, Jim beat him for it, and Linda blamed it on you. If he wasn't home, Linda can't control herself and hates herself for it, so she blamed you. This kid is clearly being raised in an aggressive household. Definitely call CPS and report the facts as you know them. They can sort this out and document the incident. Lots of good advice here, but what I was reading in between the lines, for starters, Gianna sounds like a very smart kid. Yay, Gianna. And perhaps has a lot of empathy for others given that she's already lived through, but she is only 10, so I wonder if she's so used to being treated poorly by others, your parents, that she was willing to look the other way whenever Sam treated her like shit. Be careful with that. Make sure she knows what healthy and unhealthy friendships are like so that she can make the right choices. And I would cut all ties with Linda. There is no reason for her to be barging into your house like that whenever she's being nosy or is all fired up. And I would talk to the school again and let them know that any bullying by Sam will not be tolerated by you and that they should be more involved in handling it. Now for the update. To everyone who replied to my first post, which was a lot of people, holy shit, thanks a bunch for all of your thoughts. I read as many comments as I could and I took everything you guys said into mind when I approached the situation yesterday. So the first thing that we did yesterday morning was to move into a different house for the time being. Matt brought a friend, Greg, 24 male, home with him 2 nights ago, and after hearing the story, Greg was horrified and said we could crash at his place for a couple of days. His house is in a different neighborhood that is far enough away from Linda to the point where she won't know where we are. When Matt came back 2 nights ago, I filled him in on the whole story. He was very surprised. He said he couldn't remember ever hearing of Sam being so injured before. I asked Matt if Linda has ever shown any weird behavior outside of her perfectionism, and he said no. This really strengthened the suggestion that Linda is a narcissist. Matt spent some time looking that term up, and now he definitely believes that she is one. Matt stayed home from class yesterday and went around asking the neighbors if they had seen what Sam looked like the last couple of 2 days. He was hoping to get some insight and maybe some support from his neighbors on how to help Sam. Some of them had seen Sam and some of them hadn't. Both types didn't seem to care. Great, right? Even if they all hate Linda, we figured that maybe they would want to help the kid, but it was a dead end. Gianna stayed home from school yesterday. She wanted to go and see if Sam was there, but I told her no. Keeping your advice in mind, I spent a while talking to her about what makes a healthy friendship and about what makes an unhealthy one. I told her she shouldn't put up with Sam if he was mean to her, and she needed to say no if he was bothering her. She cried and told me Sam was the only kid who had talked to her and she didn't have any friends. That might be the reason why she kept playing with him even when he was mean to her. I tried my best to comfort her. I told her I was going to the school today. I was going to try and get her into a different class away from Sam so that she can make friends. I told her Sam was definitely in a bad situation right now, but I couldn't let him be around her anymore because it wasn't safe for her. However, I was going to try to help him as much as I could. She looked happy to hear that. After talking to Gianna, I went to the school and asked to talk to the head guidance counselor. I had to wait like an hour though. I also had to go up to the front desk a couple of times to remind them who I was and why I was there. Eventually I managed to get in, although not to see the head guidance counselor, just a regular one. I explained to her that Gianna saw and what class she was in. She told me the counselor's office had gotten a report from her teacher and CPS had already been called. That was really good to hear. I asked the counselor if Sam has behaved badly in the past, and she said yes. All the guidance counselors know Sam. According to this one, his behavior has been terrible ever since he started school. She said that other parents have been pushing for him to get removed from their kids' classes since day one. He has never been moved because of Linda, probably. But enough parents have complained that now it's easy to move their kids to different classes if they want to move, said the counselor. Was it not easy before? What the F? I asked for Gianna to be moved to a different class and she said that she would try to make it happen. I thanked her and went back to Greg's house. After a couple of hours, I called Matt and asked him if CPS had shown up yet, and he said no. This pissed me off. The counselor's office had called them already, right? At that point, I decided to call CPS myself. I told them everything I knew and saw, adding suggestions that you guys brought up as to the source/traits of Linda and Sam's behaviors. They said that they had gotten the report from the school and they were heading over to Linda's. Matt called about a half an hour later and told me CPS has showed up. I made sure that Gianna was safe with Greg and I went to Matt's house. When I pulled into his driveway, I could hear Linda arguing with CPS inside her house. I went inside Matt's house about an hour later. Someone knocked on his door. It was CPS. They said they couldn't tell us much, but they wanted to let us know that Linda and Jim are under investigation/watch. They told us to keep the doors locked at all times and that if we saw or heard any more suspicious behavior, we should call them right away. When we asked about Sam, they said he was being taken care of. It was really vague, but I guess it's better than nothing. And that's all I have. I'm glad that Sam got some sort of attention. Matt, Greg, and I talked, and we decided that it would be best for me and Gianna to move in with Greg. He lives farther away from Linda and it would be much safer. I will pay rent to him and everything. He also lives in a different school district, so Gianna will be going to a different school. I went to the school yesterday to find a counselor and I set up appointments in the future to try to find a therapist for Gianna. The office at her previous school seems somewhat not responsive, so I'm glad that she'll have a fresh start at this new school. Thanks, everyone. That's all for today. If you're enjoying this story, please like and